Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching this special broadcast from our studios here in the national capital. I'm Kabir Naqvi, and over the next couple of minutes we're going to be decoding, dictating and unpacking what's really happening on the 13th day of the Israel Hamas War. Some fresh visuals that have come about, some fresh diplomacy that has taken place, and now Rafah border is going to be that point from where aid for Gazans will finally trickle through to the other side. Meanwhile, the top details, the top and the latest figures, latest from day 13, we're going to put that out for you, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of what's really happening in Israel and Gaza. Day 13, Israel has allowed limited aid to enter towards Gaza. This after President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu's meet. United Kingdom Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is also going to be visiting Israel as well. Now, Israel continues to bomb Gaza. 13 days of the war, unprecedented and relentless bombardment of the Gaza Strip. Joe Biden says that he is supporting the two-state solution. So big and crucial details coming across from the statement of the United States President. IDF troops killed 2 Palestinian teens in Gaza is also what we're picking up. Now, the United States is going to give $100 million surplus, a kitty, in terms of assistance to Gaza as well. So not all US money that's going into Israel's security, much of it going towards Gaza's relief as well. US has also vetoed Security Council's action against Israel. This is what we're picking up. United Nations Security Council, another veto over there at the hands of USA. Israel has attacked Hezbollah targets in Lebanon even as they continue to exchange fire over the last couple of days. We'll also tell you over the next couple of minutes what the Hezbollah actually is and what kind of role does it play in this conflict, ladies and gentlemen. Day 13 of the Israel Hamas War. The death toll continuously mounts and, well, we don't really know what is going to be the end of it. The ground invasion, which certainly hangs in the balance and looms. It could happen over the next couple of hours. It could happen over the next couple of days. You don't know. The troops have been amassed. More than 3 lakh reserve soldiers are on the Gaza Strip and border. And at the same time, you have the bombing of the Gaza hospital that has now changed the paradigm. There's a shift in the paradigm, the understanding of what's really happening in Israel and Gaza. The narrative is also shifting, ladies and gentlemen. But in the aftermath of the devastating Gaza hospital bombing, which claimed the lives of at least 500 people, Israel has announced that it is going to allow Egypt to deliver limited humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. The hospital bombing had placed significant strain on Gaza's already struggling medical system.
Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have headed towards southern Gaza in recent days, heeding the warning from Israel of an impending ground invasion. The Rafah border in the south represents the only viable escape from Gaza and a lifeline to the outside world. The Rafah border is controlled by Egypt and is the only exit from Gaza that does not lead to Israeli territory. In response to Hamas' attack earlier this month, Israel has imposed a total blockade of Gaza, cutting off electricity to the territory and stopping all supplies of food and fuel. That means the only likely route for humanitarian aid to enter Gaza is via Rafah from Egypt's Sinai region. Egyptian aid trucks have moved closer to the crossing, but it was unclear when or whether they will be able to cross into Gaza. Gazans with dual citizenship have also gathered at the border, hoping to be allowed through.
I am Norwegian citizen. I come every day to the Rafah border. We hear from our embassy. They called us and they told us to come to the border.
Egypt is wary of insecurity near the border with Gaza in northeastern Sinai, where it faced an Islamist insurgency that peaked after 2013 and has now largely been suppressed. Since Hamas took control in Gaza in 2007, Egypt has helped enforce a blockade of the enclave, heavily restricting the flow of people and goods. In 2008, tens of thousands of Palestinians crossed into Sinai after Hamas blasted holes in border fortifications, prompting Egypt to build a stone and cement wall. Arab countries have deep-rooted fears that Israel's latest war with Hamas in Gaza could spark a new wave of permanent displacement from land where Palestinians want to build a state. For Arabs and Palestinians, current events have echoes of Nakba, or catastrophe, when many Palestinians were forced from their homes during the 1948 war that accompanied Israel's creation.
Well, now, it's interesting to note here that the Israeli government has said that it is only allowed limited humanitarian aid to cross over from the Rafah crossing to Gaza only after United States President Joe Biden intervened and said so during his visit to Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, questions still linger over the explosion at the Gaza hospital that Hamas and the Israeli military have accused each other of triggering.
Israel says it's lifting part of its blockade of Gaza after a request by US President Joe Biden during his visit. Tel Aviv said on Wednesday it won't stop aid entering Gaza from Egypt, and the US says Egypt has agreed to reopen its border crossing to let some aid flow into the enclave. This was an airstrike near that border on Wednesday. Truckloads of aid and volunteer workers have been piling up on the Egyptian side for days as the UN warns of a humanitarian catastrophe. The fallout from a blast that hit a Gaza City hospital continues, drawing protests across the Arab world, some violent, and a debate over its cause. Hamas says hundreds of people were killed in the explosion and that it was caused by an Israeli strike. Israel has blamed a failed rocket launch by another faction, Islamic Jihad. It's provided these drone images as evidence, claiming it's not consistent with an airstrike. This was Biden in Israel.
Based on the information we've seen to date, it appears the result of an errant rocket fired by a terrorist group in Gaza. The United States unequivocally stands for the protection of civilian life during conflict, and I truly grieve for the families who were killed or wounded by this tragedy.
The White House National Security Council echoed Biden in Washington, saying the U.S. assessment was based on analysis of overhead imagery, intercepts, and open-source information. The Israeli military is also accusing Hamas of inflating the number of dead, and it has released an audio conversation it claims is between two Hamas militants discussing a misfired rocket from Islamic Jihad. Islamic Jihad has denied blame.
Well, now you just saw the released satellite images of the hospital that was bombed. The released satellite images also show the destruction of Gaza's Al-Ahli hospital, the before and after pictures as they were. The still satellite images that were captured right after the blast, ladies and gentlemen. You can see and make out for yourself for what was and what isn't at the moment. Well, now, meanwhile, aerial images were also released by the IDF. These aerial images that were released by the Israel Defense Forces show the site of the Al-Ahli hospital in Gaza before and after strikes that killed hundreds of Palestinians, deepening tensions in the Middle East. Now, various agencies across the world have verified the location of images by building shapes which match the satellite imagery. The date of the aftermath aerials was also verified by the position of vehicles and roof damage, which matched verified aftermath photographs and videos of the site, ladies and gentlemen. This forensic and intelligence report and information was also percolated amongst various forensics and intelligence teams of countries in the West as well. But meanwhile, you see, hours after the devastating strike on a hospital in Gaza, which claimed the lives of hundreds, the responsible party remains uncertain, leading to a blame game between Israeli and Palestinian officials.
Hours after a strike on a Gazan hospital that claimed hundreds of lives, it remained unclear who was responsible for the bloodiest single incident since the Israel-Hamas conflict began, with officials on the two sides trading blame. Israel's military spokesman Daniel Hagari said its forces analyzed its systems and found that rockets fired by, quote, terrorists in Gaza were to blame.
Intelligence from few sources that we have in our hands indicates that the Islamic Jihad is responsible for the failed rocket launch which hit the hospital in Gaza.
But the Palestinian envoy to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, denied that story.
It is a lie, and the Israeli spokesperson of the army, about a week ago, made a statement in which he said, evacuate the hospitals are target.
Mansour urged US President Joe Biden to help stop the carnage against the Palestinian people. In a statement on social media, Biden said he was outraged by the hospital strike, adding that he had directed his national security team to find out exactly what had happened. According to the White House, Biden will also be asking some tough questions of Israel's prime minister during a planned trip to the country on Wednesday. But Biden's diplomatic mission has now been upended by the hospital blast. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas cancelled a meeting with the US president due to take place in Jordan after Biden's Israel visit. At an urgent meeting with local officials, Abbas called the blast an ugly massacre that cannot be tolerated or allowed to pass without accountability. The deadly hospital strike comes as a humanitarian crisis grows in Gaza, with Israel cutting off power, water, food, fuel and medicine supplies into the enclave, intensifying an existing blockade there.
This is totally unacceptable.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, demanded accountability for the hospital blast. He also noted that several were killed after a UN school was struck in the Al-Maghazi refugee camp on the same day.
Violence and killing must stop at once. All states with influence must do everything in their power to bring an end to this horrendous situation. Civilians must be protected and humanitarian aid must be allowed in to reach those in need as a matter of urgency. Those found responsible must be held to account.
The hospital strike also set off a wave of protests around the Middle East. That included Palestinians clashing with Abbas's security forces as anger at the situation in Gaza boiled over to the West Bank. In Hebron, protesters marched carrying Hamas's flags, declaring the southern city for the militant group that runs the Gaza Strip.
Well, now, after the meeting of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the United States President Joe Biden, the Israeli Prime Minister updated the citizens of Israel on the United States President's visit amid a raging war. A lot of crucial points that he spoke about. Listen in.
Citizens of Israel, I would like to update you on several matters from my meeting with US President Joe Biden. Yesterday evening, before the US President left for Israel, I presented him with the concrete proof that it was Islamic Jihad and not the IDF that had fired the missile that struck the hospital in Gaza. I directed our National Public Diplomacy Directorate and the IDF to disseminate this proof. And today the world knows the truth. It will also hear from the UN Secretary Council. This is the first time that a US president has come to Israel in wartime. I spoke with him about the horrors that we face, about the terrible pain of bereavement that has affected all of us, and about the daring of our citizens and the unity among us. During the visit today, we achieved something of utmost importance that greatly contributes to our security. Immense security assistance for the State of Israel of an unprecedented scope, including assistance that further strengthens our war capabilities. Regarding the captives, I clarified three things for President Biden. First, I demanded the return for our captives, and we were working together for their return in every possible way. Second, until their return, we demand Red Cross visits for our captives. Third, we will not allow humanitarian assistance in the form of food and medicines from our territory to the Gaza Strip. President Biden came here with not just comforting and moving words, which touched the heart of the entire nation, but with deeds. In our meeting today, we agreed on actions that will ensure the continuation of our just war. We agreed on cooperation that will change the equation in all sectors and will assist us in achieving our war aims. Citizens of Israel, my brothers and sisters, the people of Israel live, and the people of Israel will win.
Meanwhile, the Palestinian and Israeli envoys to the United Nations slammed the United Nations Security Council, which was unable to pass a resolution for a humanitarian pause in the conflict between Palestinian and Israeli forces to allow aid to reach civilians in Gaza.
For over 10 days now, you have witnessed it killing entire families, bomb shelters, schools, hospitals, residential buildings, convoys. You have heard it telling people to head south of Gaza and then bomb the south. It is beyond belief that some still speak of a right to self-defense of an occupying power that has made clear it is seeking blind vengeance, forced transfer, and annihilation of our people. A political disaster is underway, and yet the Security Council of the United Nations is unable to say the only thing that truly matters: stop the bloodshed. I repeat, stop the bloodshed. For those who think they can avert a humanitarian catastrophe and a regional spillover while Israel continues bombing and killing Palestinians, think again. The region is united in telling you it is not possible. Listen to them. The only way to prevent both is to stop this criminal aggression against our people. President, there is no right. Killing more Palestinians will never make Israel more secure. 75 years of experience should have been proof enough for those who want to learn.
So far, this council has not even condemned Hamas for the atrocity it perpetrated, let alone held Hamas fully responsible for the situation in Gaza. But here we are, discussing humanitarian corridors. Does nobody else see how ludicrous this is? Calling for calm, restraint, and ceasefires is like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. Such steps will not eradicate the cancer that is Hamas. Humanitarian corridors will not prevent the next atrocity. The only thing that will is the utter obliteration of this satanic entity. What are you doing to prevent this evil?
I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of Brazil.
We demand an apology. An apology. The UN and some on this council rush to adopt the lies of ISIS-like terrorists and refuse to accept the hard evidence of a law-abiding democracy. You should apologize. Apologize for never convening the council when Hamas rockets are fired deliberately at Israeli hospitals. Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon was directly hit by a Hamas rocket just last week. Where was the council? Apologize for years of putting your heads in the ground while Hamas ceaselessly built up its war machine in Gaza.
Well, now the World Health Organization had earlier said that the Israeli order forcing people to evacuate hospitals in northern Gaza is a death sentence. Health facilities in the north of the territory are continuing to treat huge numbers of patients despite dwindling medical supplies, a shortage of beds, and repeated power outages.
The morgue at Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital is overflowing. Workers stack corpses in the parking lot outside. Bodies are coming in faster than relatives can claim them, and the hospital has run out of space for the remains. Israel's bombing campaign on the territory of 2.3 million has leveled entire neighborhoods, killing more than 2,000 Palestinians and wounding many more. Some of the injured are being treated in hospital corridors. Many of them are children. A shortage of beds, medical supplies and power outages have left hospitals in the north struggling to cope. The World Health Organization says forcing the critically ill to move south amounts to a death sentence. It also says the evacuation order has left exhausted health workers facing a choice between abandoning patients or staying behind and putting their own lives at risk. Israel's evacuation order means the clinic became a shelter for more than 35,000 refugees. Many have set up makeshift tents in the front of the building, using carpets, curtains, and whatever they could salvage from their homes.
We received messages on our phones, so we left quickly. We came here to the hospital, but the place is more crowded than the schools. Everyone came here. There are no bathrooms, no food, no water. Nobody cares about us. I was displaced with my family, 16 of us. We go from place to place. May God help us.
The UN is calling on Israel to immediately reverse the evacuation order. But for countless Gazans, it's already too late.
Well, meanwhile, on the other side of the divide, things weren't really looking pretty on the 7th of October when Hamas launched that unprecedented attack on Israelis. Sderot, that particular town, came under attack. These are CCTV footages of the first moments of what happened in Sderot. You can see people coming in cars. There's firing that's going on at the hands of terrorists. Of course, we've had to be very careful in terms of what we can show you, what we can't show in terms of violent images and footages. To the bottom right of your screens at the moment, the blurred portion does show the terrorist who has a gun in his hand, and he erstwhile fired on this particular vehicle with the passenger inside it. Now, later goes on and checks the passenger whether he is dead or not, pulls him out of the car, puts the car on the accelerator and lets the car drive off even as the passenger is still semi-hanging from the door. These are visuals. People who were almost about to go on their day-to-day lives suddenly were attacked by this onslaught at the hands of the Hamas terrorists, ladies and gentlemen. CCTV footage from Israeli border town of Sderot shows the first moments of the surprise Hamas attack on the 7th of October as terrorists began that rampage through nearby communities, eventually killing hundreds of people and kidnapping many others. Now, videos show pickup trucks carrying the Hamas terrorists driving through the city, targeting several vehicles on their way. In the videos, two people were seen running from their vehicles as well. Take a look at that. You've got the pickup trucks and the Hamas terrorists on those trucks, where they're trying to find any Israeli that's on the road out there, even as Israelis run for their lives. Another passenger vehicle that's plying on the roads, running towards safety. You can also see passengers fleeing from their vehicles after they've encountered the terrorists entering the city. Another vehicle was seen on fire at the highway as well. Again, acts of cruelty and violence, which is why we've had to really safeguard and see what we can show you, what we can't show you. There's proper bullet firing that's going on. You can see the black car that stopped on the other side with passengers now coming out of it and running for their lives before they're, well, eventually shut down. This is what actually happened. Now, location of the videos were verified as Sderot in Israel by the statues that are located at the roundabouts and the road structures and buildings which match the satellite and the file imagery. The date of the footage was also verified by the timestamp and the course armed vehicles had taken. Another one of those black cars that was earlier shot at now been hijacked by the Hamas terrorists. And even as this car now takes a left from that particular roundabout, can be seen, well, coming back in complete reverse. And it'll happen in just a few moments from right now, because that car, it just went towards the left side, and very soon, well, you can see the car is going to come reversing full back. There you have it, running away from those terrorists. Now, the attack by the Palestinian terrorist group killed at least 1,400 Israelis, most of them civilians, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, who's the IDF spokesperson as well, spoke about the true face of Hamas. He took to the microblogging website X, formerly known as Twitter. Take a look at what he had to say.
As the spokesperson of the Israel Defense Forces, I took an oath to always tell the truth, to provide accurate and reliable information. Hamas does the opposite. In Gaza, there is no such thing as freedom of speech, freedom of press, or freedom of expression. Hamas controls every piece of information released from Gaza. Last night, when Hamas announced that Israel attacked a hospital in Gaza, too many people around the world not only believed them, but amplified Hamas lies. Open your eyes and see the true face of Hamas. Hamas carried out a massacre on innocent Israelis. Hamas hides behind Gazans, using them as human shields. Hamas steals humanitarian aid from the UN in Gaza to fuel its terror. The last 12 days revealed the truth about Hamas, their brutal terror, their cynical lies, their disregard for human life in Israel and in Gaza. Hamas is a threat to the people of Israel, the people of Gaza, and the entire region. Therefore, we will fight Hamas for the sake of Israel, Gaza, and the entire world.
Well, now, our colleagues are also in Israel, some of them stationed near the Gaza border, some of them in Tel Aviv. My colleague Manish Jha brings us this ground report from Tel Aviv, where you can still hear the rocket sirens blaring, people running for cover and panicking.
तेल अवीव में इस वक्त सायरन बजे हैं और बाइडन के तेल अवीव में रहने के बाद से पूरे दिन भर कहीं से कोई रॉकेट के हमले नहीं हुए थे, लेकिन इस वक्त देखिए कि इस वक्त किस तरीके से सायरन बजे हैं। लोग इस समय सुरक्षित ठिकाने की ओर जा रहे हैं और मैं आपको बताऊं, तेल अवीव में इस वक्त फिर से रॉकेट का हमला हुआ है और सायरन जोर जोर से बज रहा है। आज दिन भर हमने देखा कि किस तरह से जब तक बाइडन यहाँ पर मौजूद रहे, तेल अवीव में मौजूद रहे, तब तक कोई रॉकेट का हमला नहीं हुआ था, लेकिन जैसे ही बाइडन यहां से गए उसके तुरंत बाद हमने देखा है कि किस तरीके से, और इस वक्त की आप सबसे बड़ी खबर ये देख सकते हैं कि जिस तरीके से बाइडन के जाने के तुरंत बाद ही महज 1 घंटे के अंदर 2 बार रॉकेट से हमला हो चुका है। मुझे लगता है कि इस वक्त लगातार देखिए सायरन बज रहा है, आप सायरन की आवाज सुनिए। देखिए, जब तक तेल अवीव में जो बाइडन थे तब तक एक बार भी रॉकेट का हमला नहीं हुआ, लेकिन उसके तुरंत बाद ही अभी आप देखिए, और ये देखिए धमाके की आवाज, जोरदार धमाके की आवाज आई है। इसका मतलब है कि आयरन डोम ने रॉकेट को डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया है, यहाँ पर उसे नष्ट कर दिया है, और अभी तुरंत ही अभी जोर से सायरन की आवाज बजी और उसके तुरंत बाद ही सभी लोग सुरक्षित ठिकानों की ओर चले आए, बंकर में और दूसरी तमाम सुरक्षित जगह पर चले आए। इस वक्त देखिए मैं भी एक बिल्डिंग के कॉर्नर में हूं और मेरे साथ यहाँ पर कई और भी लोग हैं यहाँ पर मौजूद हैं, जो जहां पर जिस पोजीशन पे था, ये तमाम जो गाड़ियां आप देख रहे हैं सब अपनी अपनी गाड़ियों से उतरकर सुरक्षित ठिकानों की ओर चले आए थे। लेकिन अब देखिए, अभी जब कि आयरन डोम ने डिस्क्री कर दिया तो उस आयरन डोम की तरफ से डिस्ट्रॉय होने के बाद अब लोग फिर नॉर्मल होकर अपने अपनी जगह के लिए, अपने अपने डेस्टिनेशन के लिए निकल गए। तो ये हालात है तेल अवीव में। तेल अवीव में आज अमेरिका के राष्ट्रपति जो बाइडन आए थे। जो बाइडन लगभग 7-8 घंटे यहाँ पर रहे। उस दरमियान तेल अवीव में रॉकेट से हमले नहीं हुए, लेकिन जैसे ही बाइडन गए उसके महज आधे घंटे के भीतर पहला हमला हुआ और अभी दूसरी बार हमला हुआ है। तेल अवीव में आकर बाइडन ने ये बात तो कही है कि वो इजराइल अकेला नहीं है, हम इजराइल के साथ हैं, लेकिन इजराइल के हालात क्या हैं इसको दिखाने का सबसे आपने देखा लाइव तस्वीरें हम आपको दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। ये सब लाइव तस्वीरें इस वक्त जो आप सड़कों पर लोग देख रहे हैं, ये सब वो लोग हैं जो कि यहाँ पर सुरक्षित बंकर से निकलकर अब फिर अपने अपने डेस्टिनेशन की तरफ जा रहे हैं, क्योंकि आयरन डोम ने निष्क्रिय कर दिया। तो क्या बाइडन भी आयरन डोम की तरह इफेक्टिव होंगे? क्या अमेरिका भी आयरन डोम की तरह रिलायबल होगा?
Well, so the Iron Dome in action, and will the ripple effect of all the rockets that are being fired from the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Palestinians continue to protest in the West Bank as the war continues. These are some of the latest shots that we are in fact going to play out for you.
يضخم الله اكبر ابعد يا رجل شوف
On our force posture in the Middle East to avoid further escalation and training of Ukrainian troops fighting Russia were among the topics that were discussed by US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and UK Defense Minister Grant Shapps on Wednesday. Now, during a meeting at the Pentagon, both officials focused on asset deployment to prevent further destabilization following Hamas's attack on Israel and the ensuing battle.
At my direction, U.S. security assistance to Israel continues to flow in at the speed of war. We've also directed the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group to the Eastern Mediterranean, where it will join the USS Gerald R. Ford and its own strike group. And those changes to our force posture send a clear signal to deter hostile actors from trying to shed more blood or to escalate this war. And the UK has sent a similar message by moving British military assets, including a Royal Navy task group, to the region to deter further aggression. But first, let me say a few words about the war that Hamas started. And by the end of this year, you will have trained 30,000 Ukrainian recruits since Russia's disgraceful all-out invasion. And because of your stalwart support, Ukraine's defenders are better armed, better equipped, and better trained.
Meanwhile, destroyed buildings line the Gaza skyline due to heavy bombardment of Gaza by Israeli defense forces. Several buildings have been fully damaged or, partially damaged as Israeli tanks move near the border for a possible ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. IDF forces in action, some of those latest visuals. Well, now smokes and flame was seen atop hills in Lebanon as crisis in the Middle East remains volatile, certainly. There have been instances in which skirmishes between the IDF and the Hezbollah have been reported at the northern front. Now Hezbollah has supported the Hamas in its battle against Israel. Israel has warned Hezbollah not to enter the war. Meanwhile, pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli protests and rallies are being staged across the world. This one coming across from New York, where signs with slogans such as "Stop Genocide" and "Stop U.S. Aid to Israel" floated above protesters' heads at a pro-Palestinian rally by the City University of New York's CUNY students and teachers near the Empire State Building at 34th Street and 5th Avenue in Manhattan. Protesters chanted "Free, Free Palestine" and listen to various speakers. The rally comes as Israel vows to wipe out Hamas in a relentless onslaught on the Gaza Strip. But who has an obvious endgame is still certainly not clear. Israel has called up a record 3.6 lakh reservists and has been bombarding the tiny enclave non-stop following Hamas's assault on southern Israel on the 7th of October, which killed about 1,300 plus Israelis, mostly civilians. Now, let's tune into the powerful voices echoing through the streets of New York.
I believe in the liberation of oppressed people all across the world. I believe in the freedom of all colonized people. I believe that Palestinians have been subject to 75 years of a brutal open-air prison system of apartheid. And I oppose injustice anywhere, especially as a black man in America. I understand how the black struggle is connected to the freedom of Palestinian people. So I'm all in favor of the liberation of Palestine.
Genocide. It's a genocide. They're just blowing up civilians.
Well, me as a black American, I experience violence and oppression from a police force that's trained by the Israeli army that's killing Palestinian children, dropping bombs on Palestinian hospitals as they suffer with terrible injuries from white phosphorus without any anesthetics or pain medication.
Why Israel have to get out of Palestine and they leave the whole land to Palestinian people, not only Gaza, all Palestine. They have to leave Palestine. They have to go find themselves another country.
Well, now shifting our focus to some other global developments as well. Ukraine has used the United States' long-range missiles, the ATACMS, against Russian forces in Luhansk and Berdyansk. The strikes indicated and inflicted heavy damage, destroying helicopters and defenses. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy praised the accurate implementation of agreements with President Biden. The US secretly delivered the missiles, enabling Ukraine to disrupt vital supply lines. Now, Russia expressed concerns about escalating tensions as well.
Ukraine's military has shared video they say shows their first use of US long-range missiles against Russian forces. Ukraine says the Army Tactical Missile Systems, or ATACMS, inflicted heavy damage on two airfields on Tuesday in Russian-occupied territory in the east of Ukraine called Luhansk and in the south in Berdyansk on the Sea of Azov. Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelenskyy confirmed the use of the weapons in his nightly address.
Today, special thanks to the United States. Our agreements with United States President Joe Biden are being implemented. Very accurately, ATACMS proved themselves. Glory to Ukraine.
Kiev earlier reported destroying 9 Russian helicopters, anti-air defenses, runways and other equipment in Berdyansk and Luhansk. Russian military bloggers appeared to corroborate those attacks, saying the Kremlin's forces suffered losses of personnel and equipment in strikes carried out with ATACMS. Russia's ambassador to the US, Anatoly Antonov, called Tuesday's attack a grave mistake. He was quoted by Russian agencies saying the United States continues to push for a direct clash between NATO and Russia. Tuesday is Ukraine's first confirmed use of ATACMS, which can fly up to 190 miles. The White House confirmed on Tuesday it recently provided Kiev with a variant that can hit targets up to 102 miles away. Washington had delivered the missiles to Kiev in secret. Western partners have been careful with supplying long-range missiles Kiev needs for its 4-month-old counter-offensive, fearing it would provoke the Kremlin. Ukraine has pledged not to use them inside Russia's territory, but said the powerful weapons would alter the course of the Russo-Ukraine war, now in its 20th month. Senior officials say deploying the weapons would let Ukraine disrupt previously unreachable supply lines, air bases, and rail networks used by Russia in occupied territories.
Well, now 600 days have passed since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and there seems to be no respite in fighting. In Kharkiv, a city close to the front line, people seem to have adapted to life at war, with locals taking on volunteer work to help each other.
As tens of thousands of people fled the Russian assault on Kharkiv, Yehor Horoshko decided to stay. He shows me the site of the missile strike on Freedom Square that blew out the windows of his former office at a software firm and killed several people.
When you many years you live in a peaceful life, and when someday suddenly come people try to kill everybody, it's very, very, very hard to express this feeling. It's absolutely total uncertainty about anything in your life.
Kharkiv is just 40 kilometers from the Russian border, and for the first 2 months of the invasion, it was a frontline city. Shells and missiles struck sometimes dozens of times in a single day. After his IT office closed down, Hroshko kept busy. Within a week of the start of the full-scale war, he and his wife had opened up a volunteer kitchen to cook food and collect supplies for soldiers. They called it Hell's Kitchen. Almost 600 days later, the kitchen's volunteers are still churning out bread, borscht, and other Ukrainian dishes, now mostly for the city's chronically underfunded hospitals.
The menu today is soup with pasta, chicken with sauce, and some porridge.
Dmitro works 4 days a week at a garage fixing cars, and the other 3 days working in Hell's Kitchen. He counts these days as his days off because he only works about 4 hours.
What can I say? Some people are on the front line and some people are on the home front, and we need to do something.
The volunteers here make about 1,000 meals per day, operating continuously. No weekends, no holidays.
The guys on the front line don't have a break. Russians don't make a break to give us a rest. Yeah, it's not our choice. In fact, when you doing something, you are in a better mood when you just sitting and reading news.
Kharkiv has been quieter since Russian troops were pushed back to the border last year, but drones and long-range missiles continue to claim lives. I ask him how long he thinks the war may last.
It's a very, very hard question. I believe all people in Ukraine want to have answer for it. Yeah, but for us, the victory is when on the border of our country, it will be safe. We don't want anything else. We just want to be safe in our country.
Hroshko and his wife are living off their savings now, but he says Hell's Kitchen can continue to deliver meals indefinitely. Life's expenses are pretty low, he says, when you focus on the things that matter most.
Well, shifting our focus here and take a look at this next one, real interesting. Artificial intelligence is helping to train brain surgeons to perform critical operations more effectively and safely. Take a look.
Could artificial intelligence be used to make brain surgery safer? At this university in London, trainee surgeon Daniel Khan is taking part in a mock operation, during which he's assisted by a real-time video feed, as is typical in brain surgery. But what's new here is that the footage is being analyzed by AI to help Khan better understand what he's seeing. The AI system, which is under development at University College London, highlights sensitive or critical structures in the brain. Neurosurgeon Hanny Marcus believes it has the potential to make brain surgery safer and more effective.
So I'm very bullish that in the medium to long term, the AI will be helping lots of surgeons do lots of operations better than they otherwise can.
Marcus says the AI system analyzed video of more than 200 pituitary gland tumor operations and gained around 10 years worth of experience in a fraction of the time. That knowledge means the AI can now not only help navigate to the correct area of the brain, but also know what should be happening at any stage of the procedure, making it a valuable training aid.
What we're really trying to do is apply AI, or artificial intelligence, to support surgeons doing brain tumor surgery at the base of the brain. And what this practically entails is us training the AI with hundreds of videos, telling it, if you like, what structures are what, and then at some point over that period, the AI becomes really good itself at recognizing things and able to support other surgeons who are perhaps less experienced in advising them what to do next.
Assistant Professor of Robotics and AI, Sophia Bano, explains how that might look in a real operation.
There can be scenarios where clinicians unintentionally are very close to a very critical structure such as optic nerve. This can have any damage or a slight more pressure on the optic nerve can have long-term complications on the patient side. So this whole tool will alert the surgeon during the procedure if there is any risk of potential complications, so they can recalibrate themselves during the procedure.
Khan, who was also involved in developing the software that is now helping him learn, says the AI system has been a valuable tool in his training. It could also provide him with step-by-step guidance during a procedure, similar to having a senior surgeon standing over your shoulder.
I think as I progress as a surgeon, there might be stages where I wonder, have I done enough of a particular part of the procedure and should I move on? And actually having that sort of assistant in the background as a reassurance to look at and say, well, yeah, actually at this stage, out of the hundreds of videos of experts that this algorithm has watched, the experts would probably start moving on to the next phase. It's a useful double check.
According to UCL, the system could be ready to be used in operating theaters within 2 years.
Well, so some calling it a revolution in medical technology, some calling it quite dangerous and too soon to be trying out. Well, you can decide for yourselves. Meanwhile, that's all the time we have for you in this special broadcast that we brought to you live from our studios here in the National Capital, styled exclusively by Paul Morley. Gentlemen, this is Kabir Naqvi signing off. Lots more coming right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
Literally every major power in the world is gearing up with its own digital currency. And so is India. But India's UPI has taken digital transactions to the next level. So, with UPI already available, what exactly is the use case for the e-rupee?
This and more streaming on world's first news.